It's not super loud, but it's really balanced. The strings sound really good. I think that probably comes shipped with elixirs, or maybe Taylor makes their own strings, but they feel like elixirs. They're very nice. Pretty bright. I think that's probably this top. I think it's Sitka spruce, gloss finish. I very much appreciate the rolled edges on the fretboard. Usually this chord starts to prick my hand a little bit, but it's very nice. I feel no fret sprout. I think the neck could use I think the more you play it, the more it'll wear in, and you'll start to glide a little bit more on it. I'm sure a lot of guitars that come right out of the box, they feel a tiny bit sticky, but usually if you're just playing your chords down here, doesn't really even affect you really much. You don't really think about it. I'm just so used to satin necks, but it feels great. There's no wood issues. The wood is very beautifully crafted. Right out of the box, the action is set up pretty well. I noticed a slight forward bow in the neck, but if you've never adjusted your truss rod on an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar, it's super easy, and as long as you're only ever doing like quarter turns, it's nothing to be afraid of, especially when you get a great guitar like this that comes set up out of the box pretty well. Making a slight adjustment is no big deal for even the average guitar player or the beginner. If you wanna watch some videos on YouTube, that's how I learned to do it. I think this could use just like a quarter turn to tighten the truss rod to pull it back a tiny bit, and I think it would still be pretty safe up here without having any fret buzz. But I think that would allow you to play a little bit better up high on the neck. If you're playing more rhythm, acoustic stuff like that, you might not need that. And so this might feel like the perfect setup to you because it's probably going to buzz less because it does have a little bit more room between the strings and the frets up here. But the general playability is really nice. I appreciate that it's kind of a smaller body. So I'm a normal height guy, I'm 5'10", and this actually fits really comfortably. Like a dreadnought feels really big. This is a little bit smaller than like a 811 size, or I think what Taylor would call their grand concert. So this is called a Grand Theater, and I think it's right between their GS Mini line, which I had one of those, and those were incredibly comfortable guitars to play, but they didn't project as much. I think this is a really cool kind of midway in between point between a full size, like 811 size acoustic guitar and something that you could either if you have small hands or you just want to feel more in control of the guitar. I think it's really nice. I think I read the nut width is a little bit smaller than your everyday, like a 1 3/4. So the strings are a little closer together. That is maybe not quite as good for the finger picking, but I honestly didn't really notice a difference. But it will make string skipping when you're using a pick really nice. So when you're doing single lines, like I don't feel like my right hand is really needing to do that much because the strings are a little closer together, so there's less movement I have to do when skipping between strings. It's a huge thing that really helps when you're trying to start building up speed with single lines. I feel like with acoustic recording, it's really important how many overtones you have going into the mic. So something like this can make an effect on the overall sound. So it's very important, like when you have very muted things, that you have something that is balanced and projecting well so that this isn't so much in the way. Otherwise, you sometimes have to figure out how to mute it, like a fret wrap or a hair tie or something like that. But I don't think this one needs it very much, but I'll just do something kind of like a la Corey Long. So I feel like it's gonna shine more on like the finger pick style stuff. So something like. And then the electronics, we got the expression system. We have volume, bass, and treble. Electronics, I think with acoustic guitars, the electronics are separate from the woods. It's more about how they respond. I think Taylor's expression systems sound good and they respond well. But one thing that I would really like to make an addition to if you're buying a guitar like this is having a knob that can control the mid-range. So whether that looks like getting a equalizer foot pedal that you run through, or something like LR Baggs makes really great DI boxes that also have an EQ in it. And that way you can kind of tune the mid-range. With bass and treble, you want the bass and treble in an acoustic guitar. You want the highs, but you also want the lows. It really helps then to be able to, most of the time, dial back the mid-range, if anything. Create space for other things in the mix. I think it gives you more of a natural sounding sound when you're strumming especially, and especially in like a church context. You know, guitar players, electric guitar players have so much mid-range. They got everything from 500 hertz up until like, you know, they're really peaking at 1,000 probably. And so you don't want to be clashing with that on acoustic. You almost want to kind of sit on either side of that. So I think having something to mess with the mid-range a little bit is really nice. Obviously that doesn't come with this guitar. I don't know what the electronics sound like playing through this mic'd up, but having the bass and treble is nice. And I also think that I assume it's a piezo pickup. Piezo pickups tend to do well with feedback. So you won't be dealing with too many issues with feeding back or anything like that. I think it's a great place to start. So on the front, we got a solid Sitka spruce top. I feel like it's a huge win. The color is really great too. You kind of see like there's like a little bit of almost it's not flame maple, but it's got all this nice wood grain in here, which is really great that you can see through the gloss. On the back and sides, we have Indian rosewood to darken up the sound of the bright top a little bit. It really balances nice. And then on the back, we have mahogany. Not quite a gloss finish on the back, but it's not a satin either. It's kind of more like maybe just a lacquer. And on the fretboard, we have ebony. I think ebony is like an ideal wood for a fretboard, mainly because it sounds great. Sometimes like maple on electric guitar can kind of fight against you a little bit. I think ebony feels really good and it works really great for acoustic guitars. I think the only thing you have to do is when you change your strings, get something like a lemon oil or a fretboard oil and make sure that you are taking care of the fretboard, because ebony is a wood that can crack more easily. It just dries out more than a lot of other commonly used fretboard woods. But I think it sounds great and it's ideal, and it looks awesome too. I think like the dark woods on the fretboard is super cool. It highlights the frets. I think the inlays on this are super cool. We have these unique designs. I think they call them Element. They're abalone. Definitely different than your traditional dot inlays or something that's like a huge inlay, like something you see on a Les Paul, like the inlays on those. I think this is really nice. It's elegant, but it's also not too in your face. On the front, we got this really cool pick guard. Really pops off, I think, from the gloss top, because this is more of just like a natural wood finish. It's like a satin finish as opposed to a gloss, so it kind of pops in a really cool way. I mean, it's really more just like unfinished wood maybe. I really like, honestly, the angle that the wood finish is going at. I feel like it's super like aesthetically pleasing, and it just really works well. I think it's just way cooler than your typical gloss, you know, tortoiseshell looking pick guard. It feels really nice too. I would imagine it's functional. It'll keep me from scratching the spruce top. We got this really cool binding here around the sound hole. I think that's really nice. Very classic looking. The same things are actually here as well in the bridge pins. It's hard to really see them, but I'm sure in the right light they will kind of shine through a little bit, kind of pop out. Normal little black binding, or I guess it's probably more wood colored binding. It's the same color as the Indian rosewood back and sides going around the entire guitar, which I feel like just really seals up the whole deal. The look of this guitar will really stand the test of time, I think. I don't think it will go out with phases, you know. So inside the guitar, we have their C-class bracing. I think bracing on any acoustic guitar is really vital to the longevity of it. It helps to obviously project further, but at the same time just helps keep the structure of the guitar so that when it takes hits or something like that, like if you're taking on the road, the bracing will help it to keep its structure of your big companies making guitars. Taylor probably has their bracing systems down. I think it's something that players shouldn't have to ever worry about, but it should be something that we expect when we're paying a lot of money for a great guitar from a company like Taylor. And so I think they knocked it out of the park. Obviously, I don't own this guitar to be able to tell for years and years down the road, but I would guess that they have that, you know, whole game down. It's a really great body size. Feels really comfortable. Obviously, so this is a smaller size guitar, which I think makes it really great for songwriters. When I write songs, and when I think most of my songwriter friends write songs, they're probably not doing it standing up. You know, they're probably sitting down, or they're like in bed, or like at a, you know, sitting in a small chair or something like that, somewhere where they're comfy. And so the fact that this is a little smaller body size, I think it can fit in more environments like that. If you're playing unplugged at a small group or something like that, you know, if you've got 20 people or less, I think it'll project well enough, but anything more than that, I would probably say it might end up being a little quiet, or you're gonna find yourself having to dig in so hard to try and rise above the voices, you know, of everyone singing. I think this would probably record really great, especially because in the mix after you record, a lot lot of the low end's gonna get taken out, especially when you're strumming an acoustic guitar. I think this would work well for recording, and you could probably get about the same sound as you would from something like a 811. I tour quite a bit, especially in the summers. I'm taking flights pretty much 2 to 3 times a week. As far as this guitar is concerned, I think it's $3,500 price point. That's pretty expensive, I think, to be taken on the road. I think you can do it, but one thing I'd really recommend for any touring musicians out there is absolutely get insurance. That way, if something does happen, you can get taken care of. Gear insurance is super cheap. I've done it for the last few years, and it's allowed me to take even my most prized guitars out and not have to worry too much. That being said, I think if you're flying into a rural area where there might not be as many music stores and places where you can find a replacement, I'd be a little worried about TSA getting their hands on this and breaking it in a case where I don't have a backup. But if you're taking it on a bus or you're putting it in a van or something like that where you have eyes on it all the time, I really don't think you can go wrong. One thing is I think this one comes with the gig bag case, not the hard shell. And so to each their own. I prefer gig bag cases, but with an acoustic guitar, if I was like checking this at the gate or something like that, I wouldn't do it in a soft shell case. So I definitely make sure you have a very rigid case that can take care of this thing. But if you're taking it as a carry-on or something like that, I think you'll be just fine. As far as how much the neck moves when you go from different temperatures and different humidities, wood is wood and it's always going to move a little bit. Every guitar maker and builder can do different things to help the wood be more stable, but the neck's always gonna move a little bit. That's especially true in acoustic guitars. And so I think that you have to be prepared for that. Always come prepared with a little Allen wrench just in case you need to make a small truss rod adjustment, because if you fly from Florida to the mountains of Colorado, you're gonna have a very big temperature change. The guitar is gonna play different. So being prepared to be able to make small adjustments on the road, I think is really important too. With that said, I would guess that at this price point, we got some really good bracing and a well-installed truss rod, perhaps even a graphite rod could be running through the neck. I don't know that for sure, but if it is, that just sweetens the deal. But I would imagine that this will hold pretty well, especially because it's also got the gloss finish and all the wood is sealed. You don't have any open pores. It's so bright and white. I feel like you can't go wrong with wearing black on stage. I mean, look at me. But that being said, I think it really makes the acoustic pop. I think it, probably depends on if you want to draw attention to yourself or to the guitar. In this case, I feel like it's totally fine to draw attention to the guitar. It's beautiful. I'd probably just wear something dark, nothing yellow. I don't think I'd wear yellow. Black button-down shirt, some black chinos, and I'd be good to go. This definitely makes me want to play semi-strummy stuff. So kind of going in between finger picking and whatnot. I think it also sounds has a nice balance on some dense chords as well. Because a smaller body, doesn't have so much frequency fighting over when you play something that's really messy like this. That sounds pretty good to me, so. Sounds great for single lines too. Yeah, it just sounds really great for any of that. I don't think I'd probably want to be going full tilt on like strumming chords. I don't know if I'd want to do super upbeat stuff like this where you're just like really digging in like. It starts to kind of compress itself a little bit. I think there's like a threshold to how much you can dig in with this. For anything below, at 75% volume and below, I think it sounds really great. I would say that if this is gonna be your primary guitar, if it lines up every box for you, I think it's worth it. If you're unsure about the smaller body size, or if you're unsure about the electronics in it, I would say try to play one in person before you spend that much money. You can always, of course, return a guitar from like Sweetwater or something like that, but you don't really want to have to deal with that. So I'd try and find one in person and at least have an idea of the exact one you're gonna buy. I think for any guitar in this price range, you don't really want to be buying blind. So I think it's really important to try and get your hands on it. But I would say that if every box is checked for you, if you've played through the Taylor Expression system, you know what that sounds like, you already know how to get what you want from it. I think it's a great guitar, and I think that at that point it's worth the money. If you plan on doing things like, if you know that you're gonna have to rip out the electronics, put something else in, or if you know that you're gonna have to replace the tuners because maybe you don't want these nickel tuners, maybe you want something else. I would say probably try to find something that checks more of those boxes in a lower price range so that your modifications don't cost you a fortune in the long run.